Welcome to another episode of Hark the Lark. We're going to talk about the Siege of Leningrad today, primarily, just to put things in perspective. And then I'm just going to mention the only siege in modern times that's longer than the Siege of Leningrad. First, we have to know where Leningrad is. So, in Russian history, there was a man named Peter the Great, and he built a city that wasn't there at all, and he named it, and it was named St. Petersburg, after him and a saint, because of course they are Eastern Orthodox in Russia at the time. So St. Petersburg was the name of it for a long time, the 1700s, 1800s, all the way into the 1900s, and then when World War I came, it sounded too German, so the Russians changed the name from St. Petersburg to Petrograd. Petrograd is Peter's city, but Grad is Russian, and Berg is more German. So they named it Petrograd. Then there was a revolution in Russia during World War I, and that city was renamed later to Leningrad, which was the name it had all the way to, it stayed Leningrad all the way till like 1990-91, when the Soviet Union splintered apart. And then it was renamed St. Petersburg when the communist government of the Soviet Union collapsed and they became Russia. So it's changed its name several times. Here's the bottom line. Leningrad is the name of it during World War II. And because of that, the Siege of Leningrad is fairly famous, because when the Germans invaded Russia in World War II on June 22nd, 1941, they sent over 3 million soldiers into Russia and made tremendous strides. And if you look at the map from where Germany's border was and all the way to Leningrad, it's quite a distance. But the Germans made up all of that, and by September of 1941, they were surrounding the city of Leningrad. They would surround that city for about 870 plus days, oftentimes just called the 900-day Siege of Leningrad, because there's actually books named that. And they besieged him, but they didn't ever take it over. They surrounded it, they bombed it, they let it starve, they let them freeze, but they never conquered it. And this long siege of Leningrad is famous for two reasons, I think. One, over 1.5 million Russians died during that almost 900-day siege. And that is to help you with an ounce of perspective, because in World War II, the Americans fought in North Africa, they fought in Europe, Western Europe, they fought in the Pacific, they fought, the Philippines and all these places. I mean, we fought everywhere, practically in the world, fighting the Japanese and the Germans. And when World War II was over, the amount of Americans that died fighting everywhere is less than half the number of Russians that died in Leningrad. And when I was in Leningrad, it was called Leningrad when I was there in 1987, I went to their burial grounds for all those people. And of course they had mass graves, because 1.5 million people in about 900 days, you just don't have places to bury every individual. So they had mass graves with just years on it, like 1941, and there was this huge mass grave. But the thing that was so sobering was the way that they had done this. And I don't know if I can explain this well enough, but the mounds of these mass graves had been done over with grass, and they were mowed very neatly. So there was a mound, and then a little bit of a flat space, and then a mound, and then a flat space, and a mound. And it was practically to the horizon. To realize how many people are dead, to go to a mass grave site like that, was overwhelming. But in 1987, when I went, the Soviet Union was still the Soviet Union, and so they took care and they mowed everything just so precisely. So it was just a very compelling sight to see this mound after mound after mound after mound of neatly mowed grass on all these people who died during that siege. When I went back in 1997, the Soviet Union had collapsed, and now it wasn't communist anymore, and they didn't mow, and so it just looked like a gigantic big field. and it wasn't sobering anymore. It was kind of weird to see. And they had, in 1987, they had marching guards and, uniformed guards. And it was just very well tended and well taken care of and well respected. And by 1997, that wasn't the case. And it was, it was discouraging to see what had happened, because that's a lot of people. The Siege of Leningrad was the longest siege in modern times forever, until the 1990s, when the Serbs besieged a city called Sarajevo, worthy of an entire episode, because that's where World War I's assassination spark took place in 1914. But Sarajevo lasted from April 5th, 1992 to February 29th, 1996. That is 3 years, 10 months, 3 weeks, and 3 days long. That is well longer than the 870 to 900 days that the Russians were besieged by the Germans. And that story is entirely tragic, and there's a fantastic book, very tough book, but it is a problem from hell. It won the Pulitzer Prize. It's written by Samantha Power. It is brilliant, and it covers like genocides through like the 1910s all the way to current modern day. And it includes like Rwanda and some other horrible events, but it's masterfully written, very insightful, gives great perspective. Just it's tough, because genocide's a tough subject. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Thank you very much.